547 years before Christ, the dust of 1,000 marching feet rises from the royal road near Sardis. 10,000 spears catch the morning light, each one held by a man who knows that if he falls today, another will take his place before the sun sets. The formation moves like a living thing, perfect in its ranks, terrible in its promise. But this is not a story of invincible warriors or divine protection. This is the story of how the Persian Empire built the ancient world's most feared military unit through mathematics, logistics, and the cold precision of bureaucratic genius. To understand how 10,000 men could terrify entire kingdoms, you must first understand that their true weapon was not bronze or iron, but the simple fact that they never grew fewer. The Immortals earned their name not through magic, but through the most ruthless efficiency the ancient world had ever seen. Immediate replacement of the fallen, constant training of the living, and a system so reliable that enemies began to whisper of soldiers who could not die. Cyrus the Great had forged this instrument of empire from the tribes of Persia, transforming mountain warriors into the professional backbone of a realm that would stretch from the Indus River to the gates of Athens. People tell the tale as divine blessing. The truth walks on bloodied sandals through camp at dawn. The Immortals earned their name not from the gods, but from a promise that Cyrus the Great carved into the very bones of his empire. When a man falls, another takes his place before the sun moves a finger's width across the sky. The legend spreads like wildfire through enemy camps. Persian soldiers who cannot die, blessed by Ahura Mazda, untouchable by mortal weapons. But legends make poor armor, and the men who wear the title know better. They bleed, they break, they cry for their mothers when steel finds flesh. The immortal part lives in the ledgers, not in their veins. Cyrus saw what other kings missed. Armies gathered for a season, fought for a month, then scattered back to their farms and forges. But empires demand permanence, and permanence demands professionals. 10,000 men, always 10,000, fed by the royal treasury, trained in the royal camps, loyal to the royal house above all gods and gold. Why 10,000? The number carries weight beyond counting. Large enough to break most enemy formations, small enough to move fast and supply without bleeding the treasury dry. Large enough to intimidate, small enough to control. Large enough to matter in battle, small enough that every man knows his place and purpose. The replacement system runs like clockwork through every Persian province. When word arrives that the Immortals need fresh blood, the recruitment officers already know their quotas. Each satrap sends his finest, young men who can shoot straight, march far, and follow orders without question. They arrive at the royal camps carrying their father's weapons and their mother's prayers, but they leave carrying something else entirely. The mathematics of fear work better than magic ever could. An enemy general counts his victories by the Persian dead littering the field. But when morning comes, the enemy lines remain unbroken. 10,000 spears catch the dawn light, 10,000 shields form an unbroken wall, 10,000 voices roar the battle cry. Yesterday's corpses lie cold in the earth, but the army that killed them stands unchanged, as if death itself had shrugged and walked away. This was Cyrus's gift to his heirs, not soldiers who could not die, but an army that death could not diminish. The promise of numbers, kept fresh with Persian gold and Persian discipline, season after season, campaign after campaign, until the very name became a whisper that traveled ahead of their march and prepared the ground for conquest. Cyrus stands in the dust of a conquered Lydian city, watching his tribal warriors drift away like smoke. Victory tastes bitter when your army melts with the first harvest moon. The Median nobles return to their estates, the Persian clans to their mountain valleys, the allied tribes to their own fires and their own gods. An empire built on seasonal loyalty is no empire at all. But the royal treasury holds Lydian gold now, and gold can buy what blood and kinship cannot. Professional soldiers, men who fight for coin rather than clan, who march when kings command rather than when seasons permit. Cyrus calls his scribes and his quartermasters, and together they design something the world has never seen. The first recruits arrive at Pasargadae carrying farmers' tools and hunters' bows. They leave carrying standardized spears, matching shields, and a new identity that runs deeper than their birth tribes. No longer Persians and Medes and Elamites, but Immortals. The transformation takes months of drilling, months of shared meals and shared discipline, months of learning that the man beside you matters more than the village that raised you. The innovation spreads like ripples on still water. Word reaches Babylon that the Persian king keeps soldiers who fight for pay, not plunder. Egypt hears whispers of an army that serves the crown, not the season. The Greek city-states debate whether such a thing is even possible, whether men can truly set aside tribal blood for royal gold. But Cyrus proves the doubters wrong with each campaign. His Immortals march when winter winds would send tribal warriors home to their hearths. They hold formation when summer heat would scatter conscript armies. They follow orders when blood feuds would tear apart traditional forces. The backbone of empire grows stronger with each test. The logistics stagger the imagination. 10,000 men need constant supply, constant replacement, constant pay. But Cyrus makes it work because he understands what rivals miss. The cost of professional soldiers pales beside the cost of losing with amateurs. A farmer fights until harvest calls, a nobleman until his estates need him. But a professional fights until the job is done, and empires are jobs that take decades to finish. The great king's gamble pays dividends beyond calculation. When rebellion sparks in one province, the Immortals march from another. When enemies mass on distant borders, the royal guard can deploy without waiting for tribal levies or seasonal musters. The empire breathes with the rhythm of professional soldiers, expands with their discipline, endures with their loyalty. The immortal draws his bow at 60 paces, drops it at 40, hefts his spear at 20, and unsheathes his sword when the enemy reaches his shield rim. 4 weapons, 4 ranges, one deadly progression that has crushed armies from the Hindu Kush to the Aegean shore. But versatility means nothing without the gear to back it. Each man carries a recurved bow of horn and sinew that can punch arrows through bronze at range most soldiers cannot even see clearly. The quiver holds 30 shafts, each fletched with eagle feathers and tipped with iron that Persian smiths forged to exact specifications. No wooden points, no stone heads, no shortcuts that cost battles. When arrows run thin, the spear takes over. 7 feet of ash wood topped with a leaf-shaped blade that can thrust or slash as need demands. Behind the spear point rides a bronze butt spike, turning the weapon into a staff that works both ends. Drop the spear and the short sword slides free. 2 feet of steel that bites close and fast when formation breaks and the killing turns personal. The shield tells the real story of Persian tactical thinking. Wicker and leather, light enough for an archer to maneuver, strong enough to turn a sword blow, painted with the king's colors, marked with unit signs that let commanders track their men through the dust and chaos of battle. Not the bronze hoplon of a Greek heavy, not the tiny buckler of a skirmisher, but something in between that serves multiple roles without mastering any single one. Their armor walks the same middle path. Scale shirts that flex with a bowstring's pull but turn a spear thrust. Bronze helmets with cheek guards that protect the face while leaving the eyes clear for shooting. Cloth trousers that seem strange to Greek observers but make sense for men who fight from horseback as often as on foot. Every piece chosen for function, every detail tested in blood. The training transforms farmers into killers through repetition that borders on obsession. Dawn to dusk, the same drills, the same formations, the same weapon transitions until muscle memory takes over from conscious thought. Draw, aim, loose, drop, thrust, parry, cut. The sequence flows like water, deadly as a winter flood. But the true genius lies in how they mesh with Persian cavalry. Heavy horsemen charge to break enemy lines. Immortals follow to exploit the gaps. Light riders harass the flanks. Immortals anchor the center. Mounted archers rain arrows from distance. Foot archers add their volleys to the storm. Each arm supports the others, multiplying force through coordination rather than individual heroics. Watch them deploy for battle, and the machine reveals its purpose. The front ranks kneel with spears braced, shields locked rim to rim. Behind them, the second line stands ready with bows drawn. Behind that, reserves wait with weapons loose and eyes sharp. No single formation, but a system that adapts to what the enemy brings. When Scythian horsemen circle and shoot, the shields come up and the counter-archery begins. When Greek hoplites charge shield to shield, The spears drop level and the killing hedge takes shape. When enemies break and run, the pursuit follows with swords bright and mercy scarce. The machine does not think, it simply responds with appropriate force applied at appropriate time. The paymaster arrives with the dawn, his mule train heavy with silver derricks that bear the great king's image. Each immortal receives his monthly wage, enough to feed his family, buy his gear, and still have coin left for the wine that makes evening bearable. But this is not charity, it is investment, and both sides know the terms. Gold buys more than obedience, it buys time. A conscript farmer thinks of spring planting while he marches, dreams of harvest while he fights. An immortal thinks only of the next enemy, the next battle, the next campaign. His family eats whether he plants or not. His children learn whether he tends them or not. Professional war demands professional focus, and professional focus costs professional wages. The economics stagger lesser kings. 10,000 men at full pay, plus their officers, plus their support staff, plus their equipment, plus their supplies. The annual cost could fund a city's construction or buy a fleet of war galleys. Critics whisper that Cyrus bankrupts the empire to maintain his guard, that no kingdom can afford such luxury indefinitely. But the critics miss the deeper calculation. An immortal serves 20 years, sometimes 30 if his body holds. A conscript serves one campaign, maybe two if the king forces the issue. Train a farmer to fight and you lose his skills when harvest calls. Train a professional and you keep his skills until age takes them. The gold spent on wages returns multiplied in experience, discipline, and loyalty that survives defeat. More than pay binds them to the crown. Each man swears an oath before Ahura Mazda and the sacred fire, words that make him brother to every other immortal regardless of birth tribe or home province. The oath ceremony transforms Persian farmers and Median horsemen and Elamite archers into something new, something that belongs to the empire rather than to the soil that raised them. Status comes with the coin. An immortal's family lives under royal protection. His children learn in royal schools. His name carries weight in any Persian city. Merchants offer better prices. Governors listen more closely. Problems disappear with helpful speed. The uniform marks him as the king's own, and the king's favor opens doors that gold alone cannot breach. Yet beneath the privileges runs a darker current. Desertion means death, cowardice means disgrace, failure means replacement. The contract flows both ways, binding the crown to provide and the soldier to perform. Break faith with the king and the king's justice follows, swift and certain as winter frost. The gold that buys loyalty also buys accountability, measured in blood when words prove insufficient. The gates of Babylon swing open without a battle cry, without a siege, without blood on the mourning stones. Cyrus rides through on his white horse while the immortals march behind him, their spears catching sunlight off walls that have stood since the world was young. The city surrenders not to Persian might, but to Persian reputation, and reputation travels on stories that the immortals write with their victories. But reputation alone does not conquer empires. The march to Babylon tests every lesson the guard has learned. Desert heat that turns bronze armor into furnaces, supply lines stretched across hostile territory, local tribes that know every waterhole and use that knowledge like a weapon. The immortals adapt because adaptation keeps them breathing. They learn to march before dawn and rest through the killing hours when the sun turns men into corpses. They learn to cache supplies at river crossings, to negotiate with nomad guides, to fight battles where water matters more than glory. When Scythian raiders strike their baggage train, the immortals deploy in traveling formation, archers to the flanks, spearmen to the center, cavalry ranging wide to deny the enemy surprise. The victory comes not through one great battle but through 100 small ones. Skirmishes at oasis springs, ambushes at mountain passes, night raids that test discipline when exhaustion makes cowards of brave men. Each fight teaches lessons. Each lesson saves lives. Each life saved keeps the formation intact when the next crisis arrives. Egypt presents different challenges, different solutions. The Nile floods on schedule, turning the land into islands connected by causeways that defenders can cut at will. The immortals must fight through marshland where formations break, where visibility drops to spear length, where local knowledge trumps tactical skill. They master river crossing under fire, learn to build bridges from reed and rope, Discover how to maintain supply lines when the landscape changes with every flood. At Pelusium, they face Egyptian heavy infantry for the first time. Men armed with bronze shields and iron determination, who know their homeland better than any foreign invader ever could. The battle turns on timing and coordination. Immortal archers laying down covering fire while engineering units bridge the defensive canals, spearmen exploiting gaps that cavalry creates through mounted charges. The pattern repeats across both campaigns. Reconnaissance finds the weakness, cavalry creates the opportunity, Immortals exploit the opening, support troops hold the ground. No single arm wins alone, but all arms working together prove unstoppable. The machine of war adapts to desert and delta, mountain and marsh, showing that professional soldiers can master any terrain when leadership gives them time to learn. When the fighting ends, the Immortals garrison the conquered cities and provinces, keeping the peace that their battles won. Some take local wives, learn local languages, put down roots in foreign soil. Others rotate home to Persia, carrying experience back to the training camps where new recruits prepare for their own campaigns. The empire grows one victory at a time, one adaptation at a time, one lesson learned in blood and paid for in gold. The pass at Thermopylae stretches barely 50 feet wide between mountain and sea, a bottleneck that turns the Persian advantage into Persian curse. Xerxes sits on his golden throne, watching 10,000 arrows darken the sky above 300 Spartan shields, and for the first time in his reign, the mathematics of empire work against him. The Immortals advance in perfect formation, their spears level, their shields locked, their voices raised in the ancient war cry that has shattered armies from India to Libya. But the hot gates care nothing for reputation, and the narrow pass forces them to fight as mere mortals, not as the unstoppable tide that conquered half the world. Leonidas waits behind his bronze wall, his red cloak bright as blood against the gray stone. His Spartans stand 3 ranks deep, their shields overlapping, their spears projecting like the quills of some great beast. When the Immortals charge, they meet not scattered resistance, but focused fury. 300 men who know death waits and welcome it as an old friend. The first assault breaks against Spartan bronze like waves against a cliff. Immortal spears find their targets, but Spartan spears find theirs as well. Men fall on both sides, but only one side has reinforcements waiting, and only one side has room to use them. The pass allows no flanking, no maneuver, no clever tactics, only the brutal arithmetic of thrust and parry, shield rim and spear point. Yet this is where legend grows dangerous to truth. Greek poets sing of supernatural Spartans who cannot die, of Persian cowardice, of divine intervention. The reality cuts deeper. These are professional soldiers meeting professional soldiers, elite facing elite, with terrain as the deciding judge. The Immortals adapt as they always do. When frontal assault fails, they probe for weakness. When spear work proves costly, they shift to archery. When daylight favors the defense, they prepare night attacks. Each failure teaches lessons. Each lesson costs blood, but blood is what professionals spend to buy victory. For 2 days, the machine grinds forward. Immortals fall by the 100, but replacements fill the ranks before the bodies cool. Fresh men step over their predecessors, take up the advance, press against the Spartan line with weapons sharp and resolve intact. The promise of numbers holds even here, even against the finest soldiers Greece can field. The Spartans fight with desperate skill, knowing that every hour gained might bring relief. Every Persian death might tip the balance. They rotate their wounded to the rear, bring fresh fighters forward, maintain the wall of bronze and flesh that blocks the narrow way. But 300 cannot replace themselves the way 10,000 can. When Ephialtes shows Xerxes the goat path around the mountain, the tactical equation shifts in Persia's favor, not through immortal magic or divine blessing, but through the simple advantage of local knowledge combined with superior numbers. The flanking force climbs through darkness while the main attack pins the defenders in place. At dawn, Spartan sentries see Persian spears on the heights above. The trap closes with mechanical precision, front and rear attacks coordinated to crush resistance between them. Leonidas makes his choice, sends most of his army south, keeps his 300 to die with honor intact. The final charge sweeps away the last defenders, but victory tastes bitter in Persian mouths. The Immortals count their dead and find the price steep beyond imagining. More importantly, they discover something that will haunt the Empire's future. Small forces of determined men, fighting on ground of their choosing, can bleed even the finest army white. The young Macedonian king arrives at the Granicus River with something the world has never seen before. Not just another army, but a machine built for one purpose: to break the Persian way of war that has ruled the earth for 2 centuries. His phalanx bristles with 18-foot spears that outreach even immortal weapons. His cavalry strikes with disciplined fury that matches Persian horsemen, and his engineers think 3 moves ahead of every battlefield problem. But the Immortals have faced young kings before, have buried the dreams of ambitious princes in the dust of a dozen battlefields. They deploy at Granicus with confidence earned through blood, their formation tested by time, their tactics proven against every enemy the world can offer. The mathematics should favor them: 10,000 professionals against 8,000 foreigners who have never faced the Empire's finest. The battle teaches harsh lessons about warfare's evolution. Alexander's companion cavalry hits the Persian left like a hammer on glass, shattering formations that have held for generations. His phalanx advances with mechanical precision, those long spears creating a hedge of death that arrows cannot penetrate, that conventional tactics cannot counter. The Immortals find themselves fighting an enemy that has studied their methods and built counters for every move. Yet they do not break easily. When the cavalry charge disrupts their line, they regroup and counterattack. When the phalanx threatens their center, they flow around its flanks like water around stone. These are professionals, men who have learned that defeat is temporary but surrender is permanent. They bend but do not shatter, adapt but do not abandon their posts. At Issus, the test grows more severe. Alexander brings his full army, 35,000 men drunk on victory and convinced of their own invincibility. Darius deploys the Immortals as his last reserve, the iron core that will hold when everything else crumbles. The narrow coastal plain should favor defense, should give Persian numbers room to matter. But Alexander has learned from Granicus, has studied Persian tactics and found their weaknesses. His hammer and anvil attack pins the Immortal center while his cavalry sweeps the flanks, creating the same tactical trap that Persians have used against others for decades. The hunted becomes the hunter, the student becomes the master. The Immortals fight with desperate skill, knowing that their empire's fate hangs on their spear points. They hold their ground when other units flee, maintain formation when chaos swirls around them, die in ranks rather than scatter like broken glass. But courage cannot overcome tactical revolution, and loyalty cannot stop historical change. When Darius flees the field, the Immortals face their hardest choice: follow their king and preserve the core, or stand and die for an empire that seems already lost. Most choose duty over survival, holding their positions until Macedonian spears find their hearts. They die as they lived, professionals to the end. Gaugamela brings the final test, the last great battle where old meets new on equal terms. Alexander fields 47,000 men on chosen ground. Darius counters with 200,000, including every immortal who can still carry weapons. The numbers should tell, the experience should matter, the accumulated wisdom of centuries should prevail. But the young conqueror has one advantage that trumps all others. He understands that war itself has changed, that the tactics which built the Persian Empire cannot defend it against enemies who have learned from Persian victories and built better answers to every Persian strength. The dust at Gaugamela settles on the corpses of empires. Alexander's cavalry wheels through the wreckage of the Persian left. His phalanx advances over ground carpeted with dead immortals. His victory cries echo across a field that marks the end of one world and the birth of another. But Darius still breathes, still wears the crown, still commands the loyalty of men who refuse to accept that their empire has fallen. The great king flees eastward with what remains of his army, the Immortals forming his rearguard as they have for 2 centuries of conquest. But these are different times, and the mathematics of retreat work against them. Each mile they march bleeds strength. Each river crossing costs men. Each mountain pass becomes a potential trap where Macedonian pursuit can catch and destroy them. The replacement system that made them immortal finally breaks under the weight of defeat. No fresh recruits march from the training camps. No provincial governors send their finest sons to fill the ranks. The empire's infrastructure crumbles as Alexander's generals carve up satrapies like meat at a feast, and without infrastructure, the Immortals become merely mortal. Yet they do not simply fade away. In the mountains of Bactria, the survivors rally around Darius one last time. Perhaps 3,000 men wear the uniform now, veterans whose scars tell the story of battles from India to Egypt. They know the odds, know the outcome, but they also know their oaths. Professional soldiers honor contracts even when kings abandon kingdoms. The camp at night reveals what immortality really meant. Not divine blessing, not supernatural protection, but the simple promise that brothers would replace brothers, that the core would outlive any individual death. When that promise breaks, when no replacement stands ready to take a fallen man's place, the magic dies and leaves only flesh and blood behind. Alexander's agents work through the Persian camp, offering gold for betrayal, pardons for surrender, safe passage for those willing to abandon their king. Some accept pragmatists who understand that dead loyalty serves no one. But the core remains intact, men who swore oaths before sacred fires and mean to keep them regardless of consequence. When Bessus and his conspirators strike, the Immortals face their final choice. The satrap of Bactria claims he acts to save Persia, to remove a king whose defeats have doomed the empire. His logic carries weight, his arguments sound reasonable. His promises of renewed resistance offer hope where only despair seems justified. But these are men who serve the crown, not the kingdom. They have followed Darius through defeat after defeat, watched him flee battlefield after battlefield, seen him lose battle after battle to the young Macedonian who seems touched by the gods themselves. Yet, loyalty runs deeper than logic, and oaths matter more than outcomes. The assassination comes at dawn, quick blades and royal flesh while the great king sleeps. The Immortals who guard his tent die fighting, their blood mixing with their masters as the sun rises on the end of the Achaemenid line. Bessus proclaims himself the new great king, but the title rings hollow when spoken over the corpses of those who served the old. Some Immortals join the pretender, hoping to salvage something from the wreckage. Others scatter to the winds, seeking new masters or new lives in a world that no longer needs their particular skills. The fortunate find service with Alexander, who respects professional soldiers regardless of their origins. But the core itself dies with Darius, the replacement system broken beyond repair, the institutional memory scattered like leaves in autumn wind. The Persian Empire dies, but ideas prove harder to kill than kings. Alexander sits in Babylon's throne room wearing Persian robes and speaking Persian words, ruling through Persian administrators who know how to make vast territories obey distant commands. Among his innovations, he keeps something that Persian gold first bought, the concept of professional soldiers who serve the crown above all other loyalties. The scattered Immortals find new masters across the known world. Some join Alexander's army, their experience valued even by conquerors who destroyed their empire. Others drift south to Egypt, where Ptolemy builds his kingdom with the help of men who understand how professional armies work. Still others march east to India, west to Greece, carrying their knowledge like seeds that will sprout in foreign soil. But the organizational model survives even when the organization dies. The Romans watch and learn, their scribes recording every detail of how Persians maintained professional forces across vast distances. When Augustus creates his Praetorian Guard, the echoes of Cyrus's innovation ring clear. 9 cohorts of professional soldiers, paid from the imperial treasury, loyal to the emperor above all regional ties or tribal bonds. The Byzantine Empire inherits both Roman methods and Persian memories. When Constantinople needs protection, the emperors create the Varangian Guard, foreign professionals who owe allegiance to the crown rather than to local nobles or traditional rivals. Vikings from the north, Slavs from the east, Anglo-Saxons from the west, all united by imperial pay and imperial purpose. The pattern repeats across centuries and continents. Islamic caliphs recruit Mamluks, slave soldiers trained from childhood to serve the dynasty rather than their birth families. Chinese emperors maintain palace guards drawn from distant provinces, men whose loyalty belongs to the throne because they have no local ties to compromise their service. Ottoman sultans create janissaries, boys taken young and raised as Muslim soldiers whose only family is the core itself. Each iteration learns from Persian precedent, refining the balance between cost and loyalty, between numbers and effectiveness. The 10,000 becomes 9 cohorts, becomes 1,000 Varangians, becomes whatever number fits the empire's needs and the treasury's limits. But the core concept endures: professional soldiers who fight for pay and serve for life. Modern armies still carry Persian DNA in their structure. Standing forces maintained in peace, ready for war, supported by national treasuries and national will. Officer schools that create professional military castes, promotion systems based on merit rather than birth, logistics networks that span continents to keep distant forces supplied and effective. The Immortals taught the world that military power flows from organization as much as from individual courage, that sustained professional forces can accomplish what seasonal militias cannot, that the army which serves the state rather than the tribe can project power across vast distances and hold it across long years. Their greatest victory was not any single battle, but the simple proof that such forces could exist at all. Before Cyrus, armies gathered for campaigns and scattered when campaigns ended. After the Immortals, every major power understood that permanent military forces were not luxury, but necessity, not expense, but investment in survival itself. The tourists walk through Persepolis today, their cameras clicking at broken columns and headless statues, seeing only ruins where once the greatest army in the world assembled for review. But look closer at the carved reliefs, at the endless lines of tribute bearers and guards, and the Immortals march again in stone. 10,000 spears raised in salute, 10,000 shields catching ancient sunlight, 10,000 faces that time has worn smooth but cannot entirely erase. The name itself refuses to die. Modern Iran speaks of their revolutionary guards as inheritors of ancient glory, elite units that serve the state above all other loyalties. The connection runs deeper than propaganda, touching something fundamental about how nations project power and maintain control. Professional soldiers, constant numbers, unquestioned loyalty, the formula Cyrus perfected, still echoes in Tehran's corridors. Visit the Pentagon and watch briefers discuss force structure, deployment rotations, readiness rates. The language has changed, but the concepts remain pure Persian. How many troops can you maintain indefinitely? How do you replace casualties without losing effectiveness? How do you ensure loyalty spans generations and survives political upheaval? The questions that kept Cyrus awake at night still trouble defense secretaries today. The United States Marine Corps carries the clearest genetic trace: elite professionals, distinct identity, esprit de corps that transcends individual service members. When a Marine falls, another steps forward to fill the ranks. The few, the proud, the Marines. A slogan that could have been carved on immortal shields 25 centuries ago. Different uniforms, same mathematics, same promise that the unit outlives any individual death. Special forces worldwide study the Persian model without always knowing its origins. Small elite units, rigorous selection, intensive training, loyalty that runs deeper than normal military bonds. British SAS, Russian Spetsnaz, Israeli Sayeret, each group built on foundations that Persian architects first laid in the dust of ancient training grounds. But the deepest echo sounds in something less tangible than military organization: the idea that immortality belongs not to individuals but to institutions, that death loses its sting when purpose survives the person who serves it. Every police officer who dies protecting strangers, every firefighter who runs toward danger, every soldier who holds the line while others retreat, they tap into something the Immortals first discovered on distant battlefields. The Persian innovation was not supernatural, it was organizational. They proved that humans could build something larger than themselves, more enduring than any individual life, more powerful than any single will. The core that cannot die because it constantly renews itself. The mission that continues regardless of who falls in its service. The loyalty that spans generations because it serves ideals rather than personalities. Stand in Arlington Cemetery and read the names on white headstones, each one representing a life given for causes larger than self. The specific wars change, the enemies shift, the weapons evolve, but the underlying covenant remains constant. Service members die, the service continues. Individuals fall, the institution endures. The mathematics of immortality, written in marble and memory. This is what the 10,000 Immortals really achieved. Not conquest, not glory, not the expansion of any particular empire, but the simple proof that mortals can build immortal things. Professional dedication, institutional loyalty, organizational effectiveness that transcends any individual contribution. The idea that refuses to die, passed from Persian spears to Roman swords to modern rifles, carried forward by every generation that understands the price of civilization and willingly pays it.